Hello, my dear students and my dear friends. Shall I believe that the first audio lecture which I've given to you on Chapter 5, Writing for Vocabulary and Grammar for Academic Writing, I believe that was clear to you. I had discussed 3 sections with you of that chapter, 5.1, which was revising words and sentences, and then we discussed 5.2, vocabulary in academic writing, and then we discussed 5.3, academic word list, which is abbreviated as AWL. Today we are going to see very important topic. Alright, that is 5.4, words and phrases to be avoided in academic writing. Yes, this question may be asked as a paragraph question or as an essay in your semester examination. Alright, and this is very important for you to learn also, because without knowing these things you cannot write academic papers. Right. So, in this section 5.4, we are going to see words and phrases that we should avoid in academic writing. Academic writing അല്ലെങ്കിൽ academic പേപ്പറിൽ നമ്മൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കാൻ പാടില്ലാത്ത വാക്കുകളും ഫ്രേസസും എന്താണെന്നാണ് we are going to see in this session. Alright. The first thing that we should avoid is contracted forms. Contracted forms or shortened forms. Let me give some examples for contracted forms. Can't, isn't, won't, or shan't, or shouldn't, or aren't. All these are examples for shortened or contracted forms. Understood? So we should not use contracted forms, but what should we use instead? We should use the expanded or the full form, like cannot. We should not shorten it to can't. Instead, we should write in this form: cannot, is not, will not, are not. Understood? So this is the first thing that we should avoid, and cannot, is not, will not, these are the forms which we should use instead of the contracted forms of can't, isn't, won't. Alright. The second point is, please avoid informal verbs or weak verbs. Alright. Like start, keep. Instead of start, we may use commence. Commence is a very formal word. Alright. Instead of the verb keep, you may use preserve. Understood? So that is a strong verb and keep is a weak verb. Alright. Again, informal verb. And please avoid phrasal verbs like go on, put off. Instead of go on, you may use continue. Instead of put off, you may use postpone. Okay, so the second category that you should avoid is informal verbs and phrasal verbs. Please don't use these kinds of verbs over there in academic writing. Next thing which we should avoid is using intensifiers or words and phrases which indicate quantity, like a bit, sort of, couple of, not enough. All these shall I believe that all my students are really matured enough to understand that this is formal writing? Academic writing is formal writing. So let me believe that my students will not use these kinds of informal usages over there in academic papers. So what should we do? You should just remove such expressions and rephrase your sentence. For example, if informal way, in informal way you may use he found it a bit difficult, or the exam was a bit difficult, or the exam was pretty easy. But informal saying or informal writing, we should avoid these kinds of intensifiers or the words which gives emphasis, or the words and phrase which indicate quantity, like a bit, sort of, couple of, not enough, etc. Instead, what should you do? You should just remove such expressions. For example, he found it difficult to prepare seating arrangements. See? He found it difficult to prepare seating arrangements. You have avoided the word bit over there. Yes. Next is informal transition. Transition is something like connecting words. When we as in our writing, we might progress from one idea to another idea. So we'll use certain words which connect these two ideas. It's called transition. All right. Now, or the words which connect different ideas. All right. So we should not use informal words like informal connecting words like so, but, also, will. Instead, we should use as a result. These are formal discourse markers, which I have mentioned in third column. As a result, however, in other words, furthermore. These are the examples for formal discourse markers. Discourse markers are something which connects two discourses or two ideas or two sentences together. So we should not use informal discourse markers like so, but, also, will. Instead, we should use formal words like as a result, however, in other words. There are many more discourse markers which we'll discuss in the later session. Okay, all right. Next is please avoid first person and second person point of view. I know all my students know which is first person and second person. First person is I, we, second person, you. Alright, so please don't use these words in our academic papers, in our formal papers. Alright, for example, if I write in this essay, I have argued that. If I write like that, that is wrong in academic writing, because we should not use I, we, you, your, me, us, and these kinds of first person and second person point of view. Instead, you should have an objective kind of writing like in this essay, it is argued that so and so. In this essay, it is argued that something. Understand? Yes. And the sixth thing that we should avoid is a run-on expression. Run-on expression means what? It's like something that indicates continuation. We all use the word etc. etc. It's a run-on expression, or so on and so forth, when we don't know the things that really follow. For example, animals like lion, tiger, elephant, something, etc. Understood? So, which means that there are many things to follow of the same kind. But please don't use the words like etc., so on and so forth in our academic papers. Then what should we use? That's a question, right? That's a question. I have listed an example. The outdoor games they played include cricket, football, volleyball, etc. Please don't use etc. Instead of that, what should you do? You should use conjunction to connect the last item in the list. Before the last item in the list, just add and. So how does it come? The outdoor games they played include cricket, football and volleyball. I believe this is clear. So please don't use run-on expressions or expressions that indicate continuation like etc., so on and so forth. Instead of that, you can use like this. Or I may give another example. Learning academic writing will enable you to write essays, reports, dissertations, case studies, and so on. And so on. That is okay, but don't use so on and so forth. Alright. Then, next point, seventh category that we should avoid in academic writing is unsophisticated and too simple expressions like bad. This idea is bad. This thing is good. This thing is cheap. No, you should not use thing or bad, good, cheap, etc. Instead, you may use words like inferior, ideal, maintain. All these kinds of expressions should be used. You should not use very unsophisticated or simple or weak expressions in our academic paper. I believe my students have understood. Thank you. And the next category to be avoided is superlatives. My dear students, what are superlatives? You might have heard people telling, he is the most intelligent boy in my class, or she is the most beautiful girl I've ever seen, or this is the best book I have ever read. Oh, this is the worst film I have ever seen. The words like best, most, worst, never, always indicate superlative degree, right? These words should be avoided in academic writing. Instead, you may use another kinds of phraseology like ideal, comparatively inferior, rarely, or consistently. These words can be used instead of superlative degree. Got it? So use better words than superlative degree. Alright, next is expressions usually found in letters. I know my students, you know that it should not be used in academic writing, informal writing, hi, cheers, love, best wishes, best regards, yours affectionately. These words use cheyyilla. Okay, next is common abbreviations. I have already told you that contracted forms are not allowed in academic writing. In the same way, abbreviated forms are not allowed in academic writing. Abbreviations like ASAP, ASAP, full form, as soon as possible. Okay, the ചെറിയ form, okay. Television, the ചെറിയ form, TV. And for internet, if someone is using net, or if for cell phone, if someone is using cell, all these are, are not to be there in academic writing. Got it? So contracted forms should not be there. Abbreviated forms also should not be there. ചുരുക്കി എഴുതുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള വാക്കുകൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കാൻ പാടില്ല. Instead, you should use the full form of these abbreviated forms. Next is slang expressions. നിങ്ങൾക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും അറിയാം. Dude, cool, sis, kidding, guy, എന്താ പറയുക, chap. All these words should not be there in your academic writing. Next is cliched expressions. What are cliched expressions? Cliched expressions are the expressions, because of its overuse, it loses its charm. Okay, അതിൻ്റെ ഓവർയൂസ് കാരണം അതിൻ്റെ ചാമും അതിൻ്റെ കൗതുകവും നഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്ന എക്സ്പ്രഷൻസ് ആണ് ക്ലീഷേഡ് എക്സ്പ്രഷൻസ്. ഇൻ ഓൾമോസ്റ്റ് ഓൾ ദ സ്പീച്ചസ് യു മൈറ്റ് ഹാവ് ഹേർഡ് അല്ലെ ഈ ഇത്തരം ഫ്രേസസ് എങ്ങനെയാണ്, ലാസ്റ്റ് ബട്ട് നോട്ട് ദി ലീസ്റ്റ്, ബ്രേവ് ആസ് എ ലയൺ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ടു ബി ഓണസ്റ്റ് എന്നുള്ള വാക്കുകളൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ കേട്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവും അല്ലേ. ലാസ്റ്റ് ബട്ട് നോട്ട് ദി ലീസ്റ്റ് ഇല്ലാത്ത സ്പീച്ചില്ല. അപ്പം ഇത്തരം വാക്കുകൾ ഉപയോഗിച്ച് അതിൻ്റെ ഓവർ യൂസ് കാരണം ഇറ്റ് ലൂസസ് ഇറ്റ്സ് ചാം. Okay, such expressions are called cliched expressions. So such cliched expressions are not to be used in academic writing. നമുക്ക് ഫൈനലിന് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാം academic writing, പക്ഷേ ലാസ്റ്റ് ബട്ട് നോട്ട് ദ ലീസ്റ്റ് എന്നുള്ള വാക്കുകൾ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പാടില്ല. ബ്രേവ് ആസ് എ ലയൺ, നോ, because this is not your literary thing, it's your academic writing, so you should not use brave as a lion. Instead you can use courageous, അല്ലേ. brave as a lion എഴുതുന്നത് എന്തിനു വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ്, courageous ആണെന്ന് കാണിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടിയിട്ടാണ്. so you can use that way. to be honest, അങ്ങനെ എഴുതേണ്ട ആവശ്യമില്ല. got it? so you should not use cliched expressions. കേട്ട് പഴകിച്ച എക്സ്പ്രഷൻസ് യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പാടില്ല. Next is highly subjective expressions are to be avoided in academic writing. Beautiful, ugly, wonderful, horrible, good, bad, all these are subjective or personal feeling, അല്ലേ. എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമ്മൾ പറയും ബ്യൂട്ടി ഈസ് ഇൻ ദ ഐ ഓഫ് ദ ബിഹോൾഡർ. കാണുന്നവൻ്റെ കണ്ണിലാണ് സൗന്ദര്യം എന്ന് പറയും, അല്ലേ. എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്ന ഒരു കുട്ടി സുന്ദരിയാണെന്ന്, പക്ഷേ അതേ കുട്ടീനെ മറ്റുള്ള എല്ലാവർക്കും സുന്ദരിയാണെന്ന് തോന്നുന്നത് ഉണ്ടാവില്ല. ഐശ്വര്യ റായ് ഏറ്റവും സുന്ദരിയായിട്ടുള്ള സ്ത്രീയാണെന്ന് ഞാൻ പറയുമ്പോൾ there are many people who might tell no, she is not the most beautiful girl. so it depends on a personal feeling, അല്ലേ. അത് കുറേ സബ്ജക്റ്റീവാണ്. So it varies from person to person. I may feel one book is so good, but that book may not be as good. അത്രയായിട്ട് എനിക്ക് അത്രയും ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടുന്ന പോലെ മറ്റുള്ളവർക്ക് ഇഷ്ടപ്പെടണമെന്നില്ല. Got it? So we should not use these kinds of words which are really subjective. Beautiful, ugly, wonderful, horrible, good, bad എന്ന വാക്കുകൾക്ക് പകരം you may use neutral words like vivid, mundane, reasonable, undesirable, proper, improper. So these are the words which can be used to express your feelings. Never use subjective expressions. കേട്ടോ. വിവിഡ് എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ ക്ലിയർ എന്നർത്ഥം. മൺടെയിൻ എന്ന് വെച്ചാൽ അഗെയിൻ ചീപ്പ് എന്നുള്ള അർത്ഥം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഡൾ എന്നുള്ള അർത്ഥത്തിൽ പറയാം. റീസണബിൾ, ലോജിക്, നല്ല റീസണബിൾ ഒരു ആർഗ്യുമെൻ്റ് ആണെന്ന് പറയാം. ദിസ് ഈസ് എ ഗുഡ് ആർഗ്യുമെൻറ്റ്, അങ്ങനെ പറയാനേക്കാൾ നല്ലത് ദിസ് ആർഗ്യുമെൻറ്റ് ഈസ് റീസണബിൾ, വളരെ റീസണബിൾ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ന്യായം ഉള്ള ഒരു ആർഗ്യുമെൻ്റ് ആണെന്ന് പറയാം. ദിസ് ഇസ് ഗുഡ്, ദിസ് ഇസ് ബാഡ് അങ്ങനെ പറയാൻ പാടില്ല. അൺഡിസൈറബിൾ പറയാം, ബാഡിന് പകരം അൺഡിസൈറബിൾ, അല്ലേ? അങ്ങനത്തെ വാക്കുകൾ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാം എന്നാണ് പറയുന്നത്. നെക്സ്റ്റ് ഇസ് വേഗ് ആൻഡ് ഇംപൊലൈറ്റ് എക്സ്പ്രഷൻസ്. ഡോണ്ട് യൂസ് വേഗ് മീൻസ് വാട്ട് മക്കളെ? ക്ലിയർ അല്ലാത്ത, അൺക്ലിയർ. And impolite means unkind. So please don't use unclear or unkind expressions in your academic paper. For example, ഇപ്പോൾ പറയാണ്, this book discusses lot of things. No, this book addresses lot of problems or lot of issues. അങ്ങനെ പറയാം, അല്ലേ? അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ദിസ് ടീച്ചർ ടോട്ട് ദിസ് മെനി തിങ്സ്. നോ, തിങ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ഭയങ്കര വേഗാണ്, ഒരു ഇംപോളൈറ്റ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള എക്സ്പ്രഷനാണ്. അതല്ലാതെ നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെ പറയാം? ദിസ് ടീച്ചർ ടോട്ട് ദിസ് മെനി പോയിൻറ്റ്സ്. ഗോട്ട് ഇറ്റ്? സോ ദിസ് ഇസ് എ വേ ഓഫ് എക്സ്പ്രസിങ്. സോ ഡോണ്ട് യൂസ് unclear, ഈ തിങ്, സ്റ്റഫ്. Where example, if I have to give you another example, I may give like this. In the train, the passenger fixed his eyes on his stuff. See, stuff. സ്റ്റഫ് എന്ന് നമുക്ക് കൊളോക്കിയലായിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കാം, ബട്ട് നോട്ട് ഇൻ ആക്കഡമിക് പേപ്പർ. നമുക്ക് എങ്ങനെ പറയാം അത്? ഇൻ ദ ട്രെയിൻ ദ പാസഞ്ചർ ഫിക്സ്ഡ് ഹിസ് ഐസ് ഓൺ ഹിസ് ലഗേജ്. ഓൺ ഹിസ് ലഗേജ്. സോ പ്ലീസ് യൂസ് clearer alternative or specific terms when it comes to academic writing. Academic writing അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫോർമൽ റൈറ്റിംഗ് ആകുമ്പോൾ സ്പെസിഫൈ ചെയ്ത് സംസാരിക്കുക, സർട്ടൻ ആയിട്ട് സംസാരിക്കുക. ഡോണ്ട് യൂസ് unclear words or impolite expressions. Thank you. Now, what are the other categories to be avoided in academic writing? Certain words that express ethnic identity or race, we should not use such words like ABCD. What is ABCD? American born, confused, Desi, Paki, nigger, colored, Madrasi, gypsy. All these words are to be avoided in academic paper. We should not use such expressions which specify ethnic identity or race. കേട്ടോ? ജാതി കാണിക്കുന്ന അല്ലെങ്കിൽ എത്നിക് ഐഡൻറ്റിറ്റി കാണിക്കുന്ന തരത്തിലുള്ള വാക്കുകൾ ഉപയോഗിക്കാൻ പാടില്ല. നിഗർ എന്നൊക്കെ വിളിച്ച് അത് കളിയാക്കുന്ന രീതിയിലുള്ള ഒരു പദപ്രയോഗമാണ്. അതുപോലെ മദ്രാസി, സൗത്ത് ഇന്ത്യന് പകരം മദ്രാസി. ഹി ഈസ് എ മദ്രാസി, ഹി ഈസ് എ ജിപ്സി. കളേർഡ്, ബ്ലാക്കിന് പകരം കളേർഡ്. സോ ദീസ് വേർഡ്സ് ആർ ടു ബി അവോയ്ഡഡ് ഇൻ അക്കാഡമിക് റൈറ്റിംഗ്. അതിന് പകരം യു ഷുഡ് യൂസ് ആക്സെപ്റ്റബിൾ എക്സ്പ്രഷൻസ് ലൈക്ക് ഏഷ്യൻ അമേരിക്കൻ, അല്ലേ? Paki ke pagaram you should use Pakistani. Instead of nigger you should use African. Instead of colored you may use black. South Indian is to be used instead of Madrasi. Got it? Next category is please don't use words which express or specify physical or mental disability. Handicapped, dumb, blind, moron, insane, lame, psycho, lunatic, all these words are to be avoided, and instead you may use one word like differently abled person. Got it? Don't specify mental or physical disability through your words. That is not desirable in academic writing. Next is please don't use words which are really gender specific. For example, policeman, postman, actress, mankind, waitress, watchman, headmaster. All these expressions specify a particular gender. Don't use such words. Instead you can use policeman, you may use police officer. Postal worker. Postal worker can be a man or a woman. So you need not specify gender by telling postman. Actor is desirable than actress. Again, server is desirable than certain words which specify the gender. Or security guard is desirable than using watchman. Got it? So again, headmaster, instead of headmaster you may use principal. Got it? So it can be headmistress also. So you may use principal. So don't use gender specific expressions in our academic writing. Next is approximations. Please don't use approximations in our academic writing because this is formal writing. So please specify. Please use certain or specific terms over there. See, for this paper, this paper has for this paper almost 10 surveys had been conducted. That is wrong. Don't use almost over there. Just avoid such usages like nearly, almost, about, etc., which expresses doubtful condition or uncertainty. Got it? Instead, you may tell, for this paper 10 books have been read. For this analysis, about 5 districts have been covered. Got it? Don't use nearly, 5 districts, almost, 10 books. All these kinds of approximations should be avoided in academic writing. Next is texting language. I have already told you we should not use contracted forms. We should not use abbreviations. In the same way, we should not use texting languages like before. Instead of before, you are writing B and numeral 4. That is wrong. I know you know it. Okay. Next is non-standard diction. Because this is formal writing, we should not use non-standard diction like anyway, a lot, all right. All right is not at all desirable in writing format. Okay. So let me believe these points are clear. Now, there are 4 more categories to be avoided in academic writing. What are they? Don't use certain expressions which are used as filler expressions or filler words or empty phrases like, just, so, really, needless to say, at all times. All these words can be used to fill the gap or space in speech but not in writing. In speech, you may use these words when you move from one idea to another. But don't use these kinds of expressions, these kinds of filler words, which are used to just fill the gap, fill the space in between 2 ideas or 2 sentences. Got it? In our writing, these are okay. These are desirable in your speech, but not in writing. Not ever in academic writing. Okay. Next is redundant phrases. Redundant phrases. I've already given you a lecture on redundant phrases in the first lecture, but still. Actual facts, careful scrutiny, final outcome, all these are still remains. All these are the examples for redundant phrases. What are redundant phrases? Phrases which have 2 words almost similar in meaning. Again, facts. Facts are always actual. So there is no need of the word actual over there. Facts in itself is actual, right? ആണ്. ഇപ്പോൾ ഫാക്ട്സ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ യഥാർത്ഥ സത്യങ്ങൾ എന്നാണ്. അപ്പോൾ അവിടെ വീണ്ടും ആക്ച്വൽ എന്നുള്ള വാക്കിൻ്റെ ആവശ്യം അവിടെ ഇല്ല. അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സത്യം എപ്പോഴും യഥാർത്ഥമാണ്, അല്ലേ? കെയർഫുൾ സ്ക്രൂട്ടിനി ഇൻ ഇറ്റ് സെൽഫ് ഈസ് എ കെയർഫുൾ ഒബ്സർവേഷൻ ഓഫ് സംതിങ് ഓർ ക്ലോസ് ഒബ്സർവേഷൻ ഓഫ് സംതിങ്. സോ ദർ ഈസ് നോ നീഡ് ഓഫ് ദ വേർഡ് കെയർഫുൾ before the word scrutiny. Final outcome, again final outcome is always the final product of something, so there is no need of using final before outcome. Got it? So how should we correct it? Just remove the unnecessary part. Remove actual from actual facts. Remove careful from careful scrutiny to get scrutiny. And outcome only is necessary. Okay. Next is excessive use of qualifiers. Appears. Examples for qualifiers are appears, seems, maybe. All these are the words which express doubtful condition, or which express doubts on our claims. If we include excessively these kinds of qualifiers, what will happen? The claims that we are making in our paper will not be taken for granted. For example, if we always use these kinds of qualifiers excessive, for example, appears, it appears to be so and so, it seems to be so and so, it may be that means we are not certain of our points, we are not certain of our findings. നമ്മുടെ ഫൈൻഡിങ്സിൽ നമുക്ക് ഉറച്ച തീരുമാനമില്ല, കൃത്യതയില്ല എന്നാണ് ഇത്തരം വാക്കുകൾ. തോന്നുന്നു, അങ്ങനെ തോന്നപ്പെടുന്നു എന്ന വാക്കുകൾ ഒരുപാട് ഉപയോഗിക്കുമ്പോൾ the findings of our academic paper will not be taken for granted. So don't use such kinds of words excessively, because it might produce doubts on our claims, on our findings. Okay, next is expression showing personal judgment. I have already told you we should not use first person and second person point of view. We should not use I, we, you, us, me and all. In the same way, we should not be judgmental. For example, we should not have our own opinion in our academic paper. I agree, I think, I believe this is a very critical issue. No, just ignore or just avoid such terms and just write like this is a very critical issue. I think this is very important. No, this is very important only. Got it? I think എനിക്ക് തോന്നുന്നു എനിക്ക് ഞാൻ വിചാരിക്കുന്നു എന്നുള്ള വാക്കുകൾ മാറ്റി, because personal judgment കാണിക്കാൻ പാടില്ല. Instead of that, it's like this. It is evident from the text that so and so. It is clear from the evidences. From the evidences, it is clear that ഇങ്ങനെ ഒരു കാര്യം ക്ലെയിം ചെയ്യുന്നു. Got it? So don't use personal judgment. Don't use expressions that show personal judgment. I hope these points are very clear to you, and this is very important question. It may be asked as a paragraph question also, as well as you should study this, because if you are writing an academic paper, you should know what all things that you should not do. Right? Thank you. Very, very important topic is discourse markers. It may be asked as a paragraph question. Whatever I've given you in these slides should be included in your paragraph answer on discourse marker. So before knowing what is discourse marker, you should know what is a discourse. What is a discourse? A discourse is a unit of language longer than a sentence. It may be as short as 3 or 4 utterances, or as long as a lengthy piece of writing like a novel. For a novelist, his novel is a discourse. For a teacher, his lecture or her lecture is a discourse. Now I am giving you a discourse on discourse markers. Got it? So whatever a person wants to convey is discourse. Got it? It may be as short as 3 or 4 utterances. 3 or 4 ഉച്ചാരണങ്ങൾ, 3-4 ഉച്ചാരണങ്ങൾ അടങ്ങുന്ന ഒരു സെൻറ്റൻസ് ആയിരിക്കും ഏറ്റവും ചെറിയ ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ്. And it may be as long as a novel, a poem. For a poet, a poem is a discourse. Got it? So discourse is only that. It's a language. It's a language used for communication, communicating a particular idea, a particular thought. I believe that is clear for you. Got it? Now, what are discourse markers? That is really easy. Discourse markers are words and expressions used to connect one discourse to another. ഒരു ആശയത്തിൽ നിന്ന് മറ്റൊരു ആശയത്തിനെ കണക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്ന വാക്കുകൾക്ക് പറയുന്ന പേരാണ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കേഴ്സ്. And there are other names for discourse markers. What are they? They are sentence connectors, linking words, linking phrases, transition signals. Why is it called sentence connector? Why is a discourse marker called sentence connector? Because it connects 2 sentences. Why are they called linking words? Because these are the words that link 2 sentences or 2 ideas together. Again, linking phrases. These are again, it can be phrase also. ഒരു വേർഡ് മാത്രമല്ല, ഒന്നിൽ കൂടുതൽ വാക്കുകളും discourse markers ആണ്. For example, on the contrary, in other words, to sum up, in general, besides, firstly, secondly, thirdly, later, to begin with, to start with, all these are discourse markers. Got it? So ഇത്തരം വാക്കുകൾ, അതായത് ഒരു ആശയത്തിൽ നിന്ന് മറ്റൊരു ആശയത്തിലേക്ക് കണക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്ന വാക്കുകൾ, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ആശയത്തെ ഇൻട്രൊഡ്യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ ഉപയോഗിക്കുന്ന വാക്കുകളും ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കേഴ്സ് ആണ്. Got it? So they are called sentence connectors, linking words and linking phrases, because these can be phrases which connect to or which link 2 ideas or 2 sentences or 2 thoughts together. Now, why are they called transition signals? Because they, as we proceed, as we move on from one idea to another, these discourse markers are functioning as signals which signify transition from one idea to another. ഒരു ഐഡിയയിൽ നിന്ന് മറ്റേ ഐഡിയയിലേക്ക് പ്രോഗ്രസ് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ ആ ട്രാൻസിഷനെ സഹായിക്കുന്ന കണക്റ്റിംഗ് വേർഡ്സ് ആണ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കേഴ്സ്. ബട്ട് എന്ന് പറയുമ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെയാണ് അല്ലേ? ബട്ട് നമ്മളൊരു ആശയം പറയുന്നു, മറ്റൊരാശയത്തിലേക്ക് പോകുമ്പോൾ ഇടയിൽ നമ്മൾ ടുഡേ ഈസ് എ സണ്ണി ഡേ ബട്ട് ഐ ഡോണ്ട് തിങ്ക് വി ക്യാൻ ഗോ ഔട്ട്. അങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞാൽ ഒരാശയം പറയുന്നു, ഇന്നൊരു സണ്ണി ഡേ ആണ്, പക്ഷേ നമുക്ക് പുറത്ത് പോകാൻ പറ്റില്ല. അഗെയിൻ ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് ഓൾസോ got it, discourse marker. Or if I tell you anyway, I feel, ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്, ഓക്കെ, ഐ ഫീൽ ദിസ് ഇസ് ഗുഡ്. ഐ ഫീൽ എന്നുള്ള വാക്കിൻ്റെ ആവശ്യം അവിടെ ഇല്ല, ബട്ട് ദാറ്റ് അഗെയിൻ ഇസ് എ ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കർ ടു കണക്ട് an idea which comes before and after. Got it? So these are the other names for discourse markers: sentence connectors, linking words, linking phrases, transition signals. Makkale, when a question is asked on discourse markers, you should be giving all these 4 sentences in your paper, and then you should give examples for informal discourse markers and formal discourse markers. Okay, that we'll see in the next slide. I believe this idea is clear for you. Yes. Now I'll give some examples for informal discourse markers. Actually, great, fine, like, okay, so, still, well. ഒരു കാര്യം ഇങ്ങനെ പറഞ്ഞുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മളിടയിൽ ഓക്കെ വെൽ വിൽ ഡിസ്കസ് ഇറ്റ് in the next class. Good. Now, anyway, you know. See, these are the words or these are the discourse markers which are used informally. Informal speech il namukku use cheyan pattunna discourse markers ആണ് ഇതെല്ലാം. What is ഇത് examples ആണ് കേട്ടോ. Examples for informal discourse markers which should not be there in our academic writing. നമ്മുടെ academic writing ഭയങ്കര ഫോമലാണ്, അപ്പോൾ ഇത്തരം വാക്കുകൾ യൂസ് ചെയ്യാൻ പാടില്ല. But in your paper, when the question is asked, you should explain what is a discourse marker, and then you should give examples for informal discourse markers also. Got it? Yes, thank you. Now we'll see what are the examples for formal discourse markers. Firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally. However, in general, in the same way, moreover, on the one hand, on the contrary, therefore, on the whole, to sum up, to conclude, to begin with, all these are examples for formal discourse markers. I hope it's clear. All these are examples for these are the discourse markers, or these are the connecting words, or these are the sentence connectors, or linking words, or linking phrases, or transition signals which should be used in our academic writing. Some, if question may be, instead of discourse markers, there may be a question like what is a linking phrase, what is a linking word, or what is a sentence connector, again what is a transition signal. My dear students, you should know that these questions are all about discourse markers. Alright, yes. So these examples also should be there in your answer. Got it? On discourse marker. Alright, yes. Now we are moving on to see what are the functions of discourse marker. What is a discourse marker for? എന്തിനാണ് discourse marker യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്? My dear students, the main function of a discourse marker in a piece of writing is to establish connection or relationship between ideas. രണ്ട് ഐഡിയാസ് തമ്മിൽ യോജിപ്പിക്കുന്ന, രണ്ട് സെൻറ്റൻസുകൾ തമ്മിൽ കണക്ട് ചെയ്യുന്ന, രണ്ട് തോട്ട്സ് തമ്മിൽ ബന്ധിപ്പിക്കുന്ന വാക്കുകളാണ് ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കർ. ഓക്കെ, ആൻഡ് discourse marker help an academic writer in sequencing ideas or structuring. നമ്മുടെ ഐഡിയാസിനൊരു സ്ട്രക്ചർ കൊടുക്കാനും സീക്വൻസ് കൊടുക്കാനും discourse markers can be used. For example, if I use firstly, that means I'm giving a structure to my presentation, that I'm going to introduce a new point firstly. Secondly, that means I'm giving a structure Okay, this is my first point, this is my second point. So firstly, secondly, thirdly, to begin with, finally, later, all these are the examples of formal discourse markers which help you to sequence your ideas or to structure your presentation. Okay, introducing a new idea. How can I tell? Using to begin with. To begin with means I'm going to introduce something new. Okay, or furthermore, that means I'm giving a different idea. I'm giving you one more idea. Furthermore, got it? All these are examples. So these discourse markers help you to sequence ideas, introduce new ideas, or to give emphasis or clarification. What are the discourse markers which help you to give emphasis? For example, if I given you, if I've completed my presentation, in the end I may give a kind of emphasis, for the points that I've already given. How can we do? I may use in the end. In the end is an example for a formal discourse marker which is used for emphasizing or clarifying. Okay, in the end, in short, eventually, etc. Okay, now if I have to present a counter argument, an opposite argument, a different argument, we may use on the contrary, in contrast, however, although. On the one hand, all these discourse markers can be used to present counter argument. Got it? Now, I can add more points like furthermore. I can add more points to my presentation by using discourse markers like furthermore, besides, in addition to, എന്ന വാക്കുകളൊക്കെ കൊടുത്തിട്ട് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാം മക്കളെ, മോർ ഓവർ എന്ന ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കേഴ്സ് ഒക്കെ നമുക്ക് പോയിന്റ്സ് ആഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ സഹായിക്കുന്നു. ഇഫ് ഐ യൂസ് വേർഡ്സ് ലൈക്ക് ഇൻ ജനറൽ or on the whole, broadly speaking, in most cases, all these are examples for discourse markers which help you to generalize your statements. നമ്മുടെ സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെൻറ്റ്സിനെയോ നമ്മുടെ പ്രസൻറ്റേഷനോ നമ്മുടെ ഐഡിയാസിനെ ജനറലൈസ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമുക്ക് സഹായിക്കുന്ന ഡിസ്കോഴ്സ് മാർക്കേഴ്സ് എന്താണ്? What is that? In general, in most cases, on the whole, broadly speaking. All these are formal discourse markers which help you to generalize your points. Give example. Certain discourse markers help you to give examples. For example, for instance, such as, namely, etc. These are the discourse markers. These are the connecting words which help you to give examples, right? Yes. Now, if I give you to sum up, to conclude, all these discourse markers help you to sum up all your points. So these are the functions of discourse markers. Okay, the main function is to connect ideas. Okay, my dear students, I believe my points are clear. So whenever a question is asked on discourse marker, you have to include all the points in these slides which I've included on discourse marker. Okay, that means you have to give a definition on discourse marker, give examples of informal discourse marker, formal discourse marker, and then what are the functions of discourse marker. Okay, Makale. Thank you.